Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to introduce to you Dr. Jessie Hehmeyer, the physician founder of Well Empowered, where she practices data-driven, heart-centered functional medicine. She created Well Empowered with one commitment in mind, guiding you in creating the health and vitality that transforms your experience of life and alters what is possible. She does this by taking a root cause, natural medicine approach that marries the heart and science together. Through working one-on-one and with groups, Dr. H provides access to the information and inspiration and strategies that you need to produce a sustainable and transformative health outcomes. Excited for you to listen in, and welcome to the show. I am super pumped to dive in today. So I actually have Jessie here today, Dr. Jessie Hehmeyer, and her and I are going to dive into all things rooted in your health. And so, as you guys know, here at the Noble and Nourished Podcast, we really dive into what we can do holistically in our health. And a lot of those things come to mind when it comes to whether that's your nutrition or how you can support your fitness routine or how you can dive into your overall experience when it comes to putting your entire house into creating a household of health. And so really excited to dive in today. So Dr. Jessie Hehmeyer, glad you're here. And thank you for coming on the show. So give us a little background on how you kind of got started in your Well Empowered journey.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Chase. It's such a treat to be here with you and your glowing energy and your amazing tribe. So thank you very much for inviting me to join you today. And yes, how I arrived where I am. I like to say, and I don't know, Chase, it sounds like, we're kindred spirits on this one. Straight lines are boring, right? We can all agree on that one, right? So for me, how I arrived at doing what I do here at Well Empowered, data-driven, heart-centered, and outcome-oriented natural medicine, functional medicine. It started for me way back in the early 2000s. In 2002, I opened up the first high-intensity strength training facility in Chicago with a husband and wife and was the managing partner there for 4 years. And I really loved the capacity to empower people and, allow people to move along this journey of feeling strong in their bodies. It was, so much fun. And I also saw in my own journey as I had continued to learn about how to care for my body and resolve longstanding health concerns and kind of conundrum sort of stuff, that there was more for me to learn. There was more for me to contribute. And so I went back to school, got a couple of graduate degrees, arrived on the other side of that in 2013 and began practicing functional medicine, this data-driven natural medicine. And in 2018, I went out on my own with Well Empowered and really one of the things that I have found has been so powerful in this Well Empowered work is the marrying of science and heart, bringing them both to the moment such that people are able to author a whole new future, a whole new relationship with their body, with food, themselves, and actually produce outcomes with ease that they had been struggling with for years and decades. So it's really it's such a privilege for me to do this work.
I absolutely love it. So you mentioned, you have a story of coming from the fitness world, which, of course, being a personal trainer, I can totally relate here. So coming from fitness space, coming from running a gym and having partners there, was there a pivotal moment where you're hold up, we're not doing enough here? Or what was that kind of transition? I know you kind of touched on it, but I want to dive a little deeper.
Yeah. So for me to say a little more about my own personal journey and my relationship with my body and things that I dealt with, you and I chatted a little bit and, we both actually share this background of, dance. I wasn't in cheer, but I was a dancer growing up. And so most of you, if you were a dancer, you kind of get body stuff, right? And that was very much true for me, right? At a young age, I really was hyper-focused on my weight and in a way that just wasn't really empowering for me, right? And I saw over the course of years and decades that I was caught in this lose-lose relationship, right? It was this inherited paradigm that I now call the all or nothing paradigm. And it's not the one any of us would invent. We are all way smarter than that, but we did inherit it. And so being able to see it for what it is actually opens something up to choose something different. And so this all or nothing paradigm, this is the deprivation or overindulgence. Those are the two options in the all or nothing paradigm. And pretty reliably, people bounce back and forth between the two and perpetually feel like a failure. And they're not producing the outcomes they're committed to producing. So it's kind of, again, this lose-lose situation. And it's really born of self-aggression, right? It's really born of not feeling enough. And so at a certain point in my 20s, when I was like, help me, like, please, God, help me in this journey. I drew a line in the sand and I began to author what I now call my middle ground. I began to find a way to move forward and bring in science, learn things I hadn't learned before about how food impacts the body, and also do so with a sense of compassion for my humanity, including my imperfections, right? And so this became a whole new journey for me. And it was just kind of like in the journey for a while. And at a certain point when I arrived feeling, wow, like I'm actually a different person now. Right? Not only do I have the outcomes that have me feel great, but I am coming from a place of self-love, right? I feel empowered in my body, and my commitment is to make this available to others. And so it was at that point that I decided to go back and get a couple of graduate degrees, because what's true for my body is not necessarily true for your body, right? Being able to understand the science behind whether it's digestive distress or weight struggles or, energy struggles or hormonal imbalance, whatever it is, being able to understand the science helps me be targeted in how I guide people, and therefore, allows them to arrive at feeling their best, looking their best, and ultimately being their best, which to me is what it's all about, at in a whole different level.
I love it. So when you mentioned, so a second ago, you kind of mentioned, or you touched on like this all or nothing, which we all know, like we dive all in, we do everything, we try to be perfect in all of the scenarios. We try to be like, okay, I did this. Okay, checkbox. Now, I know you mentioned like that was part of like a space that you were in and kind of like helped you move through that all or nothing. And then you kind of got on the other side of it. You were like, oh, I can actually have grace with my journey, and I can actually be in this like little bit of you can't, if you're on YouTube and you're watching that, so I'm kind of like moving side to side, but you can be in this like hybrid of back and forth. But you didn't get there without like learning a little bit about where you were, what you were experiencing, and then awareness is what I'm actually hearing to start. Like you have to be aware in order to make decisions moving forward. And so in that question, like as you're finding awareness, like how do you kind of like walk people through discovering, is it all or nothing? Or is it like something else that we need to tackle? Because you mentioned like, okay, here are some of the symptoms we could tackle, but like, how do you help them get to that awareness piece, in combination with some of the data you're kind of pulling?
Yeah. Well, to touch back on the question, how do we know if it's all or nothing? I would say, it's all or nothing. If you struggle, if you gain weight, you lose weight, you gain weight, you lose weight, you gain weight, you lose weight. It's pretty predictably all or nothing in that situation, right? And even you could just look to your experience over time, right? Again, we're looking at deprivation or overindulgence, right? If you jump in for Whole30 in January and on the first day of February, you're eating a large pizza and drinking a bottle of wine, well, pretty good sign, right? And again, not your fault, like not bad no morality in this. This is like you inherited that approach, and so far it's been the water you're swimming in, right? So when you can start to see it as the water you're swimming in, then we can begin to find new water, quite honestly, right? And so when I work with people, they're typically, by the time we are partnering, they get it, right? They get like what I'm doing is just not working for me. And sometimes it's just, maybe they don't quite see the all or nothing dance, but they see like what I'm doing is not working. So like, let's figure out a different way to do it. And regardless, whether it's the all or nothing or not, we're still going to dive in and do some looking at how your body is working, right? I might look with some people, I might be looking at inflammation. For other people, it might be looking at detox pathways. For others, it might be looking at nutrient sufficiency, stuff like that. All these things play a role in how our body works, right? So, the being able to see like what I'm doing is not working is the first step. And then, in the engagement, when I work with people, we do work through something I call authoring your vision of vitality for your health in your life, right? And in that, we're really marrying not just the what, but the why. What is this really about for me? And I imagine, Chase, you have your own story, right? And for me, I remember, being in my, kind of probably 26, 27, and, standing in my kitchen. And this is, one of many aha moments when I drew a line in the sand for myself. I'm standing there and, like I have my car keys in one hand and I have got this like empty sludge filled glass, in another, right? And there's this sound and the sound something like, that's my stomach, right? And the sludge-filled glass is the remnants of the master cleanse. Like it's like that thing with like cayenne pepper and maple syrup. I don't even remember.
Right?
Yes. Okay. Yes. Right.
I totally did that one.
Right. Exactly. The car keys are given by my grumbling stomach and the starvation, right? And where I'm headed is to McDonald's to get a McFlurry because naturally when you're starving, that's like the solution, right? And so it was like one of many moments that I was like, wow, this is broken. Like this ain't working. Like this thing, this sludge-filled master cleanse thing ain't working. And I do know that the McFlurry thing doesn't work either, right? So it's
but I'm still going for it.
Right. Yeah, right. Literally, right? So, but beyond just getting like, yes, I got this ain't working. But then another layer was like, and it's really costing me something. Like it's really my struggle with this. It's interfering with my capacity to be fully connected to others, right? It's interfering with my capacity to fully contribute to others. It's, interfering with my capacity to feel like the immense love and wonder that's in my life. And no, I'm not going down like that. This is not how my life is going to go. Right. And when I kind of had all of those, kind of arise collectively, it's not like I knew what the path would look like, but I knew it wouldn't be that. I knew I was done with that. And and it was a combination of almost like a prayer and a promise, like, please help me find a new path forward. And my promise is if you do, I will devote my life to guiding others. And I'm so grateful to say, truly, like my prayer was answered.
Oh my gosh. And isn't that so funny? Like how in a moment of like, wait a minute, like this realization, or it's like in a breakdown moment or in a moment of like, holy moly, like what do we do? Like what is happening and why is this happening? Like this is the way that I am not wanting to move forward. And, and I remember that exact pivotal moment for me. Like when I got pregnant, I was like, oh, heck no. Am I teaching any of these like, diet culture, like body image, like skinny is best situation to my girls? Like, and at that time I only knew I was having one kid. Like I only had the one kid coming, but I was like, and I knew God was giving me a girl. Like I already knew that from the beginning, but that aside, like generationally, like I knew that was something I didn't want to pass on. And I'm hearing similar to you, like if you teach me, if I can learn through this hardship and these like, and even though like in theory, like is that one time that you're sitting there with, like that one master cleanse and that one pivotal moment, like, was it the like lowest of the lowest of, I'm sure you've had low points, right? But like,
right.
You remember that pivotal like second
yes.
where you're like, okay, my body's telling me this thing. And I promise you, dear Jesus, I promise, like, if you help give me the tools, I will share these tools and I will like pay forward. I promise,
Yes.
And that's the thing. Like but it's so similar, because that's kind of how discipleship is in anyways, right? And like outside of health, right? Like God already designs us to be a lover of Christ, and how we share that is to be a disciple, and we share his stories, we share his love with others. And when he gives us a calling, and he gives us a passion, and he gives us like this like fire inside of us, like it's our job. Like he says, like go and make disciples. Like, and that's how we can disciple to others, is by giving them the tools and sharing our story. And like, hey, here's how I overcame this hardship. And I did it because God said, hey, we're going to do something. And I told him, like, hey, I promise, like, I will do the things when, like, if you just give me the tools, I will take care of it. And he does. Like, he provides, and he puts us through all those things. Ooh, that just got me. I'm sweating now. Because it's so true. It is so true. And it's so cool. So, okay, so switching gears. So let's kind of talk a little bit about, like, you mentioned a heart-centered. Like, how do you combine this heart-centered with, like, the data? Like, kind of talk me through your philosophies here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's interesting. I always think it's interesting when someone comes to, walks to my virtual front door, so to speak, right? Knocks on my virtual front door. And we begin this conversation of, is this going to be a powerful, fruitful, transformative partnership? I'm only a yes if that answer to that question is a yes, right? And there are sometimes where people think all I need is information, like just do the labs and tell me, which I'm like, oh, girl, that's not going to work.
That's not going to work.
Like I don't need to tell you that your body is going to thrive more if you find a way to get some broccoli than if you eat a pint of ice cream every night. Like I don't need to tell you that. You already, like I'm, just as an example, right? So, and listen, like our relationship with our bodies and food and the things that we need to shift, like it takes something. And if it didn't take something, we wouldn't have how many people, millions of people turning to a medication. And I'm not saying no one is benefiting from them, but what I'm saying is we wouldn't see people turning to that out of a sense of desperation, right? If this were easy, right? Spending thousands of dollars month after month with unknown long-term consequences, right? The reason people do that is because it's really difficult, but it is something that is masterable. And I would say the people who haven't yet mastered it, at least partially, what is missing is a conversation grounded in heart brought to the conversation of science, right? So how that looks is really inviting people to envision, just as a starting point. There's a lot more I do, but the beginning of opening the door to bringing heart to this world, to the science, and to your health journey is really envisioning what it would be to thrive, like with your mind and your heart, right? So time traveling, what's it look like 5 years from now for you to be thriving mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, everything? What's that like? What's it feel like? Can you feel it in your cells? Can you see what it would be like to get ready in the morning, to move about your day, what it's like to interact with others, what it's like to interact with yourself in this future? It really starts when you start to look at that, you begin to gain access to your unique heartfelt why. Right? Because it's easy to be flippant about the answer. Like, why? Well, I just want to feel good. I just want to feel more confident. Yeah, but when you say that it's all in your mind, like it's your brain talking, which brains are great. Love our brains. But I need you to feel it in your heart and in your soul. And when you're able to do that, like really access that, things begin to shift.
I do this exact same thing, and I'm going to kind of bring it back to when you're working with clients, right? And you're encouraging that, hey, why are we doing this? What are we doing? What are we trying to create? And as you said, sometimes those statements are very, and I'm just going to be honest here, they're very vague, and they're very like what everyone would answer to that same question. And I'm like, there's a little more to that, right? Like, okay, well, I just want to lose 10 pounds. I'm like, well, why is that 10 pounds so important to you? Like there is a deeper like reason for that one. And I need to help you get there. And that's why working with someone externally, instead of getting just the labs and I'll read the labs and I'll figure it out myself, like that's why working with a coach that has already been through it, done it, an expert in the field, because they're able to pull that information out of you that you didn't even realize was there. Right.
Yeah.
And
100%.
as you mentioned, like, it's not just a mental thing. Like, oh, I just want to lose 10 pounds. I'm like, but just losing 10 pounds or feeling good in my skin, I'm like, that's really not very clear at all. Like you are not specific enough in order to get you through the moments of, you know, when you're like, wait, why is my body responding to these supplements this way? Or why is my body like not responding in this way? I'm like, well, because you're not going to power through those moments of hard to continue figuring it out if you don't even know why you're starting. Mm-hmm. So how do you kind of navigate some, you know, on that topic, like how do you navigate clients when they are kind of going through that and maybe they did figure out, let's kind of skip a step here. They already figured out maybe how their why is and they are clear, but maybe they're hitting that little bit of a roadblock and they're not really seeing some of the results that they're wanting, or their body's maybe doing something a little different. And they think, well, I'm doing the things you told me to do, but now my body's like almost rejecting it. Like, how would you kind of have this conversation with them to help them, one, stay on track of the plan, and two, kind of educate them through that?
Yeah, I would say a few things. It's not that never happens. It's not common that happens, right? Because we really do gather so much information to inform how we're going to proceed. We take a really targeted approach, but also, you know, in that information I've gathered, sometimes there will be times where I'm going to let them know, like, for example, a commonly overlooked cause of a slow metabolism is elevated inflammation, right? Elevated inflammation is like foot on the brake, not going anywhere. That scale is staying where it is, right? And there's actually a lot of biological intelligence to that. I can go down that rabbit hole, but I'm inclined to stay on subject. But yes, okay. Just trust that inflammation leads to a slow metabolism, and it's actually a really smart design, right? Actually, I will go down that rabbit hole real quickly.
Yes,
let's do it because it's fine. But elevated inflammation, right? Our body's is supposed to create inflammation in response to injury or illness, right? It's one of the ways it handles it and initiates the healing process. And if you think about hundreds of years ago, that saved our ancestors, right? Inflammation, holding on to calories. If you're sick and you can't forage for food, that's a good thing. You need those calories to survive, right? Inflammation, conserving calories. If you're out hunting and you broke your leg, good idea. Keep those calories in there, right? So we're all here given by that response. Now, the problem is when it's chronically engaged, right? It's not just up because someone's injured. It's not just up because someone's sick. You know, the resolution isn't happening. And there are a lot of different reasons why that might be true. But that chronically elevated inflammation is just a huge overlooked barrier to weight loss. So when I'm working with people, we will get their numbers, right? So often people have no idea inflammation is elevated. Sometimes people think like, well, my joints would hurt or my skin would be red or well, I'd be bloated or something like that. I mean, maybe, but way more often than not, it's kind of a hidden phenomenon. We only know because we get the labs. And if inflammation is elevated, I will let people know, listen, it's going to be a second, right? It's going to be a second. We're going to have to, first priority is break this cycle of inflammation. And we are going to hit that hard. And it's likely you're going to be tapping your toes for, depending on how high it is, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, doing the same thing and going like, what in the hay? Why is this not shifting? Right? And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh my gosh, I see it. It's happening, right? The scale is moving, right? And so that's a pretty, and then, you know, we'll circle back and we'll measure inflammation again. Like we will do that because I want to see those numbers move. But it's like, in many ways, it's like you can tune in pretty darn well to when that happens just by seeing not working. Oh my gosh, it's my pants fit differently, the number's going down, whatever it is, right? Yeah. So that is, you know, to me, it's like an important part of the journey is just making sure people are well educated on what to expect.
and I think a good coach is going to come in and say, hey, here's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing. Here's what's potentially going to happen. It's going to be it's going to A, B, or C. Here's what can happen. And there's a lot of, even though you're doing something, right, you're doing something physically, meaning like we're physically making some adjustments and all those things. Like there's a lot too that happens up here. And I think that's kind of, maybe the point we can kind of touch on next is like, okay, but as we're going through those processes, some people are going to hit those roads. And we experience that, in my coaching program too, right? Like, hey, you're going to get 6 weeks in and that motivation's not going to be there. You're going to be like, wait, I don't feel as good. Like, I don't want to do my workouts right. And that's just part of the process. But as a good coach, as a good doctor, as a good healer, as someone that like is leading clients through, a point of healing, like you have to know that these things are coming up. You have to educate your clients on what those things are. And also talk about like what's going to be happening up here in your brain, because there are so much that like, as you're sitting there, like waiting patiently for the, whether it's the inflammation to go down or, I'm doing these things, I'm taking these supplements. And then you're just like, we're in a very, our world, right? Like it's a very quick, you get answers quick, you get responses quick. There's all these, fast results situations out there. And so sometimes having that patience and waiting, just like God says, be still, wait it out. Like I will come for you. Right. And like, you're just like, wait, but, and you're wanting those results to follow super fast. And so there is a mental capacity to what's happening. And I think you probably experience this too, where people are like probably questioning your practices too. Like, well, you said, and you're like, yes, but we have to step back a little bit. And this is what could be happening. And here's why. And so when you think about walking people through maybe some of that mindset shifting, like what are some things or conversations you kind of have with them when they're in those moments of like,
yeah, well, I mean, to start with, as I mentioned, I walk people through a very structured process of authoring your vision of vitality for your health in your life. So this becomes the place people start moving from. So they author their vision of vitality, and also they develop a ritual of connecting to it daily, right? And that changes the perspective of like how things go. First of all, I also give them homework assignments between appointments. So they are readings with questions, they're podcasts with questions. I actually custom select them based on the person and what I see will make the biggest difference based on where they are. And yeah, to me, it's, you used a great word, and the word was motivation there, Chase, right? And the old paradigm is motivation, right? To me, motivation is short term. It's there, it's not, it comes and it goes. But when we're inspired in spirit, right, that is what it's really is to authentically author one's vision of vitality and live from it, is the practice of being in spirit, of being inspired. Because when we're inspired, we do things that we don't give a whole lot of airtime to like whether we like doing them or not, right? It's like, no, we just do this thing because I'm so committed to it. I'm committed to honoring my health as sacred, right? So perhaps someone might have as part of their vision of vitality, I honor my health as sacred. Well, if I just embody that, if I just be in the conversation of what does it look like for me to honor my health as sacred. It says nothing about like, oh, I can never have a cookie. No, absolutely not. In fact, sometimes you might say, gosh, this social connection and incorporating, like this food in it, like that is in this moment, that is honoring my health as sacred, right? And so it's a whole new way of working with yourself, your journey, the choices you encounter. And I let people know out of the gate, 1 year is one lap, right? 1 year is one lap in this journey of living aligned with your vision of vitality. Because in 1 year, you are going to encounter all the things. You're going to encounter the vacation, the anniversary, the birthday, the loss. You're going to encounter boredom and excitement and, all of the feels of being alive, as well as the logistics. Like, damn it, they're out of the thing I was going to order. Or my kid got sick and I couldn't go to the grocery store last night, or like whatever it is, you're going to encounter all those things. And, you know, in this journey of 1 year of one lap, it's really a game of like, okay, now what does it look like for me to honor my health as sacred? Now, what does it look like now in this moment to live aligned with my vision of vitality? There's no script. There's just the living of it.
Yes. And I think that's so important for people to understand, is because they think there's an end game when it comes to like your health. And I'm like, wait a minute, especially for us women, ours is all over the place. Like we are like, I think it's kind of fun. Like if you really think of like how God designed a woman, and you think of like it's a full on, we have like 4 seasons that we go through in life. Like it's so amazing. And that we get to experience it in that way. And so when we think, or some people, you know, saying, oh, well, when I get to where I want to go, I'm like, well, you're always going to be wanting to get better. And just because you get to that one point, if you don't have someone in your space ready to like push you to that next space, like you just kind of get, right? And then you, as you mentioned, like, hey, you did 1 year, great. You did a lap. And that is so true. And fitness and your health and you know, your nutrition journey, right? In a woman's journey of like, hey, now I got over, you know, this one phase of my life, okay, postpartum. And now here I am going through, you know, menopause with my, you know, 20-year-old or 15-year-old, whatever, right? So you're going through these things and it's a never ending learning process. And I think that's so fun. Like, doesn't that like make it exciting to live and to like be a part of like what we're doing in this world? Like so fun, because we never stop learning. And what's also cool about that, and I'm sure I really want to dive into some of the root things that you like love tackling, because when we think about growth and we think about getting to that next level, or I want to heal this chronic illness that I've been experiencing since I was 12, right? Like whatever those things are. And as you're going through these, like how can you help, like, or what are some things that you guys implement at Well Empowered that are root, like let's get to the root, because that's the fun thing. Like it's not about just like, okay, like we read your labs and now here are the things we're going to be doing and now you're connected to your heart, right? But like the why, like why is your body responding in this way? And here's the cause of it. And here's what generated from it. And like the root is so fun. And that's what started me on my journey. Like I got psoriasis at like 27, the first time in my entire life. And I've shared this on all my socials, through the journey, because it got insane. And I was like, and my husband's like, just go get steroids. I'm like, I'm not doing that. There is something going on. And I remember like fighting with him because he's like, Chase, you are exploding with this psoriasis problem. And I'm like, I'm just going to deal with it. Meaning deal with it. What I meant is I was going this more holistic route, and it was all coming out. And I was like, whoa, this is nuts. But thinking through that, like I was so passionate at that point to get to that root cause. I'm like, why is my body responding at 27? Like I've never had a skin issue my entire life. And all of a sudden I'm like on fire with like psoriasis. It was nuts. So and I share that story because like, I think a lot of people have an extreme thing where I think, well, two things. One, my personality is very much, I made a decision and my decision's made and I'm not going back on it. Like I'm going this holistic route and I'm getting to the root cause. Whereas I think sometimes people are like, it's too hard to go that route. Yeah. And this is a much easier route. And I'm like, no. Like when we decided to not do medications in my home, I was like, I threw them all away. And my husband's like, hey, where's this? I don't even know what he looks for. He looks like he has his own stash because my husband's a husband and I cannot control what my husband does. But I can control what I do for my body and what I do for the girls. So talk me through some of the root things and how you kind of educate around, like, let's get to the root of this.
Yeah. Well, it was so, as you were speaking to your journey, right? It's, the different route for different things, right? So I'm hearing psoriasis and I'm like, okay, how are those detox pathways working? How is, what food sensitivity is like, has not been discovered yet, and leaky gut, right? So they're just, they're how things show up, there could be multiple different explanations, and commonly there are. Usually it's rare that it's just one thing,
sure.
right? But it really is, looking at, if we just take, for an example, an autoimmune condition like psoriasis, it's like, what is going on that your immune system is not recognizing you as you? What is going on that your immune system has started going after you? And so there can be a lot of different reasons for that and a lot of different points of leverage, right? Let's look at these vitamin D levels, because vitamin D does a really good job of helping our T cells know us, right? Know us and not attack us, sort of thing, right? Same thing with omega-3 fatty acids. Or do we have enough of those guys? So, these are all things that we can tease out and really go after. Is there a yeast overgrowth? Are there, microbes in the gut that are just not working in favor of this person, right? So it really is different per person. And, when I work with someone, the first thing we do is, when we really do a deep dive, we start with a consultation. Now, your listeners are going to hear I have an offer that's not quite a deep dive, but a really great place to start. But when we do a deep dive, we start with a consultation because I want to be able to know what's going on with your body. I want to be able to answer your questions. And I want to make sure we're going to win in this game, because I'm not playing if I'm not winning. And my winning is you winning.
Same.
Yes,
totally agree.
Yes. And so in that, I start to hear in that first conversation, okay, threads of like, okay, puzzle pieces. What do we got to do a 3-day comprehensive microbiome assessment on this gal, right? We've got to do a deep dive on her adrenals and her sex hormones, right? So really it's in that conversation that I start to think from my head, like, okay, puzzle pieces. What puzzle pieces do we need to gather for her? And then we get to it, right? We start to get that information. And like, I really I'm like a kid before Christmas. When I get lab results in, it can be like, I'm like, okay, just wrapping up a few emails after dinner. And I'm like, oh, I just got the email that our results are available. I'm like, go to bed. I'm like, no, I can't. I have to look right now. I can't wait. I need to know. Right. Yeah. And it's like, it's so fun. It's so fun to get to see it and see the puzzle pieces come together and go like, that adds up. This plus this plus this equals psoriasis, right? Whatever the case may be, right?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important too, like not only for, you helping put together strategy, right? And that's the same, I do the same thing with my clients. Like, hey, what are we trying to achieve? What are we looking for? Okay, we need a strategy to follow. And it's personalized because like I get frustrated, in the fitness industry where you see a lot of like blanket type programs. And I'm like, because everyone's so different. Like everyone is so different. And so a protocol, right, or a strategy for person A is going to look different for person B. And like, it's not always the same like road, just like you can, like, if you think about going to the park down the street from my house, I can get there 6 different ways. Yeah. Right. And it just depends on the flow of the day, but that's, what things do we need to go, maybe you need to go to the grocery store on the way to the park, right? So you're going to go this way first, then we're getting to the park. And so when you think through like getting to those root causes, like it really does take this like understanding from someone that understands, right? And making sure that client knows why we're going to the HEB or to the grocery store. We have HEBs down here. And I always say HEB and I'm like, wait, all my listeners probably like are not always up from the South. And so I'm like, oh, they don't have HEBs everywhere. Grocery store, right? But sometimes we don't always have to go to the grocery store. Sometimes we can just go that direct way and get to the park and get to that root cause. But as a client, we want to make sure that we understand the root. Like, hey, here's why the psoriasis, the inflammation, this is showing up. This is the 5 directions we have to stop before we get to the psoriasis. Like we got to fix this and this and this and this and this first before this potentially can be better. Right.
Yeah, and for sure. And along the way, sometimes we can find one piece that leads us to another thread. Right. It's like, I'm thinking about a gal who I work with she came to me for ADHD and, kind of like, mood sort of stuff. And, we did some digging, and ultimately, long story short, it led us down a rabbit hole called mold toxins, which is what she's dealing with, right? It's not like where I start, but over time it was like, wait. Oh, yeah, this is what it is for your body.
What?
It's mold burden.
So, hold on a minute. Hold on. So she was experiencing symptoms of ADHD and then come to find out, what?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Low, really low energy, ADHD, just like, and she's actually a kiddo. She's 16 and her mom's like, this is not my daughter. I know my daughter. This is not my daughter. Right. And, everybody was like, get her on meds, get her on, and she was like, no, I'm not doing it. There was something, this is not my daughter. We're figuring this out.
And hey, kudos to that mom.
100%. That's what I said all day long, because she was such an amazing advocate for her daughter. She went to so many different people, and like tireless. I was like, good for you for trusting yourself, for knowing what you see is real.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And then, I'm just thinking about all the things that now this, sweet little 16-year-old doesn't have to go through.
Yes.
For after effects or after causes or all these other symptoms that could have been presented had she gone a different route.
100%.
Oh my God, that tears me up. Like, that's the kind of thing, like, I'm just like, oh my gosh, because this one mom was like, wait, red flag, something's off. This is like, and ask the questions to actually get to, that fires me up. That is so good. That is so good.
Yeah.
I love it. This was such a good conversation. Okay, so you have something for our listeners. Tell us a little bit about what you got.
Oh my gosh. Well, so I'm very excited to offer y'all. I can say that because a lot of you guys are Southern.
Yes, you can.
My husband's from the South, so I speak a little Southern. But yes, a fabulous mini health audit. And what this health audit is, it's 2 60-minute appointments, virtually, of course. And you are going to be gifted with 50% off. The link is going to be below. So take a look. It would be such a joy to work with you rock stars.
I love it so much. And guys, this was so fun. Like, it was interesting because as soon as we got on the call today, I'm like, you know what? The energy's great. Like, I'm feeling like it feels so natural. And it was
100%.
Very fun convo. So I appreciate you. And I'm going to drop all of your details where everybody can find you, and the links below, all the good things so they can just be in your world. And I know we're following each other on Instagram, so it's so fun. But again, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Chase. I love the work you're doing and you are fabulous. Thank you so much.